for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. God, in your scriptures, you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace, order, and justice. Therefore, this afternoon, I pray for our Board of Supervisors. I ask that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern in the midst of the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in each of their lives, and joy in their task. Lord, I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give them an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved county of Goochland. These blessings we ask in your most blessed name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like for Ms. Wanda Taylor to bring a person before the board here and introduce him to us in the county.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Board of Supervisors. It is indeed my honor and my privilege to present to some and introduce to others our Director of Elections and Support. He comes to us by way of Manassas, Prince William, the second largest jurisdiction in Virginia. There he served as the deputy position where he was in charge of communications. And he also, which I'm very proud of, is that he worked as an election officer and election chief. So he brings with him an arsenal of giftings. He also is a trainer, and he's also technically savvy. That's fun. And so it is my honor on behalf of the electoral board. I'm glad to introduce someone today, Vice Chair of the County Electoral Board. On behalf of the electoral board and the residents of Goochland County, I present with the board.
Welcome.
I look forward to serving the citizens of Goochland County for this year to come. I'm looking forward to it. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next thing we're going to do, I'll be stepping down here, and the county administrator will be chairing till we get a new chairman and vice chair elected. I'd like to take a moment, though, to thank this board for the strong support they've given me over the years. And I guess most of you know I've had some personal battles, and they've been very supportive of me, and the people of Goochland have too. And I just want to thank everybody, and just to remind you all, I'm sure most of you know what a fine board these people make up, and the county staff. It's something to be proud of. With that, I'll turn it over to you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the staff, I just want to say it's been a pleasure to serve under your leadership and follow your guidance as we prepared these agendas over the past year, and truly thank you for your commitment and work and support of the staff. Mr. Chairman, with that, I will now open the floor and accept nominations for the chair of the Goochland County Board of Supervisors for 2018.
I would like to nominate Mr. Peterson in District 5 as chair.
Do we need a second?
Second. Okay. And take a voice vote for this? All members in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Peterson. At this time, I will open the floor for nominations for vice chairman for the Goochland County Board of Supervisors for 2018.
Mr. County Administrator, I'd like to place the name of Supervisor Manuel Alvarez in nomination as the vice chair of this board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Alvarez.
Thank you.
Juggle that. Okay.
Keep them straight.
Okay, thank you for your indulgence there while we get organized up here. I think with the board's indulgence, I'm going to invoke a bit of executive privilege here to thank Mr. Creasy again and just kind of pile on to all the laudatory comments that have been made. This is Mr. Creasy's second term as chair, and he's completed it in an exemplary fashion, and he has been there every step of the way and has been, in fact, a catalyst for the good things that have happened to this county over the number of years. He served his country well and his community well, both in military uniform, police uniform, and as a life member of Fire Rescue Company 5 here in Goochland. He's a very humble and plain-spoken person, and he avoids the spotlight, but he is an excellent leader, a valued colleague, a thoughtful mentor, and a great friend to all. And Ned, I can't say enough good things about you and your entire family and what you've done for Goochland. So on behalf of Goochland County, let me thank you for the 10 years of service on this board so far. You're not going anywhere, and in fact, chairing the board for a second time. So thank you, Ned. We really appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you.
And I also just very quickly want to thank my colleagues on this board for their mutual trust and respect and confidence and continued support as we move into 2018. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to serve alongside you on this board. That said, the next item on the agenda is the resolution adopting rules of procedure and the code of ethics and standard of conduct for the coming year. We've all had a chance to read them in advance. At this point, I'd like to suggest that we have a bit of discussion on some of the changes that may be appropriate here. Board members, are there changes that folks would like to see made to these rules of procedure and standards of conduct?
Mr. Chairman, there was one change just in language on section 4.1 of the rules of procedure. It's changing where it says monetary claims against the county will be handling in accordance, should be changed to handled in accordance. believe the copy in our package is already corrected, but the one that went out to the public was still incorrect.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I had one suggestion myself to expand the different ways that we can signal our vote, to not just be aye or yay, but to be either aye, yay, yes, any of the affirmative, and then same with negative, to be either nay, no, or some other form of negative. So I'd like to see that expanded a little bit. Any other thoughts or suggestions on changes to the rules of procedure?
Just for your ready reference, what Mr. Peterson's referring to is the new 2.8 in your procedures.
I think it's titled voting. All right, well, if there's no other comments or discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept them as written and with the corrections stated.
Been moved to adopt the resolution as amended. Do we have a second?
A second?
It's moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you for that. The next item is a resolution establishing the board meeting schedule for the year 2018. I'll say that again, for the year 2018. You've all received this in advance. Are there any comments or concerns about the proposed schedule of board meetings? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the meeting schedule as presented.
Been moved to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously as well. The next item on the agenda is the chairman's comments. And I just have a couple of quick comments. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody in the audience and at home who may be viewing in, and wish everyone a happy new year for 2018. And to kick off the new year on a positive note, I'm pleased to announce that last month, Goochland County received an award from the ACCE as the most taxpayer-friendly county in the nation for 2017. And the award looks something like this. And for those that may not be familiar with the ACCE, they use 4 basic pillars to evaluate the county's performance: taxes, spending, debt, and transparency. The selection process started over a year ago. It was a series of telephone interviews and board presentations and panel discussions, both in Washington, D.C. and out in Nashville, Tennessee. And I just wanted to thank everybody in Goochland County that contributed to this achievement. And that starts with the engaged citizens, many of whom are here with us today, and includes all of the elected, appointed staff members for Goochland County government, our constitutional officers, the school district, the affiliates and regional organizations, basically the entire county, because this is a team award for everybody to participate in. So with that, I've asked our county administrator if he wouldn't put this trophy in our trophy cabinet next to our AAA credit rating and our other trophies, and he mentioned to me that he may have to expand or upgrade our trophy cabinet if we keep doing this. It's a high-class problem to have. But it's also important to note that this county did not seek out this award. We did not apply for this award. We did not fill out forms. We did not make phone calls. This award was unsolicited, and it found us based on all the great work that's being done. And there's an awful lot of good counties out there doing great work, so it's quite an honor for Goochland to be singled out this way as the most taxpayer-friendly in the country. So congratulations to all. That concludes my remarks. The next item on the agenda is the county administrator's comments. Mr. Badesky, do you have any comments for the group?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to be brief, just a couple items of procedure for today's agenda. Unfortunately, Ms. Murtis Quarles was not able to join us here today, so the next item we're actually recommending to defer to the consent agenda to approve, and at her leisure at a future meeting, we will have her back to give her that recognition and thank her for her many years of service to Goochland County. In addition, we will, and while you'll handle this after citizen comment, we will not need to close session today, and we'll schedule that for a future meeting as well as it listed on the original agenda posting. I did want to point out that the board did just adopt its 2018 meeting calendar. In that calendar, there's a substantial number of public meetings in this room that relate to the annual budget. The annual budget is our process that we identify our priorities and focus for the next fiscal year as it relates to where we make our financial commitments. We have substantial public opportunity for engagement in the budget process, and also in addition to these meetings that are listed in the agenda, we have 3 additional town hall meetings where we solicit comment and feedback from our residents. But also informally, we receive a lot of feedback based on what people would like to see in the community. We hear service demand questions. We also hear how difficult it is for some of our residents as it relates to the tax burden. And so that feedback is extremely important to us as we develop the annual budget and encourage our residents' participation in that process. And the last thing, as we have an impending weather situation as soon as this evening, just want to remind folks as we relate to county operations, it is our goal to maintain county facilities open and operable to all of the public as often as possible during our business hours. That being said, as the weather does not permit, we do take the safety of our employees extremely serious, but we also want to make sure we can provide a safe environment for our citizens to transact business on our properties. And so we take any delays or closures extremely serious. We're up at 5 a.m. making decisions, trying to decide just as the schools are making tough decisions on should the schools be available. And so we do that and look at that on our facilities as well. But I assure you, we try to keep open as often as possible and as long as possible, but the safety of our employees and our citizens is of an utmost importance in that decision process. So keep posted. If you're not a friend on Facebook, we post there. We also post in the different media outlets, and we notify our employees in a number of different ways. But please know that we will operate as often as possible throughout winter conditions, but do make decisions on occasions to either delay, close early. In a rare occasion, we would actually close the county, but those decisions are not made lightly. So we'll keep you posted and publicize that information as available. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Badesky. The next item on the agenda is the citizen comment period. This is a period of time in which anyone can approach the microphone and address this board on any item that pertains to Goochland County business. So at this point, I will go ahead and open up the citizen comment period. As you come forward, I would just pleasant reminder to state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to about 3 minutes.
My name is Patricia Hendy, and I live in Wheatlands on Mannequin Sabbath. I would like to address, I wrote it so I could be fast. I would like to address Goochland's stated commitment to our comp plan, that the county remain 85% rural in character, and what strategies are currently in place or could be implemented to achieve that goal. In October 2011, Goochland received an economic development strategic plan from the consultants Warren, Stahl, and Boyer, which selected a group of 5 Virginia counties that could be used as a peer group to benchmark their visioning. Loudoun County was one of the 5. What caught my eye when I was reading the report is the structure Loudoun's comprehensive plan determined was best to structure the Economic Development Department to support ag as well as other commercial forces within the department. There are 2 separate teams in the economic development, so it's ag and economic commercial. I would like you as a board to consider implementation of a plan that will bring the 85% of Goochland into parity with the 15% that is driving our current land development, growth, and land use. Kelly Hinkle has held the position in Loudoun County as ag officer for 7 years now. She shared the following information with me, and I would like you to consider what she said. Many counties implement this dual approach. It is not always a staff position, as in Loudoun. Sometimes it takes the form of an appointed advisory council. There is a toolkit that has been developed to form such a board by the Rural Economic Development Council at the Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services, which can be readily obtained. 20 years ago, Loudon felt the same pressures for development that we do, and they valued the quality of life that existed there, and they could look down the road and plan ahead. And so they developed a plan which they called the 200,000 acre solution to address how to retain quality of life and generate adequate financial returns. This evolved into the plan they use today, which implements the same metrics that is applied to all economic development. The focus is on business on farmland. Loudoun County has 44 wineries, farm breweries, cut flower farms, lavender farming, and small beef to market cattle farming, selling to Washington, D.C., and to Richmond restaurants and suppliers. There is an aeroportotic production facility that and a winery expanding to milling wheat for bakery. Loudon's agriculture, in other words, the brewery is using the wheat they're making the beer with to mill and also expand as a bakery. Loudon Ag Officer coordinated matching grant monies through the Governor's Office of Economic Development, Ag and Forestry Industry for a competitive bid, and they won the bid for the aeroponic production facility. I think they were battling with Fairfax, and they won the matching monies in the grant. Another matching grant was provided for the winery expansion, and those are among some other examples that Loudon does to keep farmers farming in the changing face of agriculture. So to summarize, Kelly and her staff work with the ag community to put together packages with USDA, farm credit, state or federal programs administered by the state, and other programs she mentioned were rural development, mapping funds, which is administered by states, as well as comments on local bank interest in building successful business where lenders are taking a notice. And Kelly welcomes working with us in any advisory capacity, and I have contact information if anyone would like that. I would really plead with you. This is a moment for us. It's a moment with potential to be the kind of county we say we want to be, but you're going to have to take action to get there. I want to compliment the board. I want to thank Mr. Creasy, and thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hendy. Anyone else like to approach? Seeing, oh.
Seeing John.
Seeing John? I was hoping.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that other folks don't feel like this is exclusive territory up here. But
And your name and address, please, is?
Yes, Mr. Jonathan Lyle, 1521 Mannequin Road.
Thank you, sir.
And I will keep my comments brief. I did notice the timer did start about 30 seconds late on the previous person, so I just want to say thanks, guys. I mean, I live in Goochland not because I have to, but because I want to. And part of the reason that I want to is because I feel comfortable that that award that was presented to the county does reflect a great quality of life for me personally, and I would hope and I would project that it does for a lot of the other residents here in the county. So thank you. My little company used a time tracking program called T-Sheets, and folks would log in using their phones, and I'm not sure that you folks would want to start time tracking, because I think the amount of time you put into these jobs, your jobs, is if you knew how much it really was, I'm not sure that we would continue to have your willing participation on this board. It's a lot of work, and I see that just from the couple of times a month I'm here sharing the space here. So thank you, guys. I mean, it just is appreciated from this citizen. And Mr. Creasy, you have been a ball burner. I mean, you got the ball rolling. I do have a fairly clear memory of 12, 15 years ago, and it's a world of difference, and most of it for the good. I'm not going to give everybody a complete 100 because you still had that lawn cutting ordinance that you went after. So we don't forget. Just remember, we don't forget. But you guys really do a great job from my perspective. And again, I'm here because I want to be. And I appreciate it because you guys have really made it a place that has allowed me to have that quality of life. I think there's a 7 o'clock citizens comment, and I might expand on the ag development comments that the previous speaker shared with you, because agriculture is business, and economic development does include agriculture, but ADD just kicked in. I'm starting to wander a bit, so let me conclude by saying thank you, guys. Thank you, and Mr. Creasy in particular. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Lau. Anyone else like to approach? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the citizen comment period. The next item on the agenda was the request to postpone and changes and additions. We've mentioned 2 already. The canceling of the closed session for this evening, and the MERS quorum was moved to the consent agenda. Are there any other changes or additions or deletions? No? Okay. Well, seeing without objection, we'll go ahead and make those changes to tonight's agenda. Next item is the minutes approval. We've got minutes from 2 days, 3 meetings. There was 2 meetings on November 28th and 1 on December 5th. The 28th was a special meeting and a joint work session, and the 5th was our regularly scheduled board meeting. We've all had a chance to read the minutes in advance. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve the 3 different meetings minutes.
Been moved to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded and thirded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay. Motion is carried unanimously. The next item is reports. Our first report is VDOT. We have
Mr. Chairman, we were notified by VDOT earlier today due to the impending snowstorm that they would not be able to send representation today. However, if there are any comments from the board, we're glad to pass them along, and
okay.
They're probably where they need to be right now, hopefully.
Yes, keeping our roads clear and safe. Any comments or thoughts to pass along through Mr. Badesky? No? Okay. Well, we'll look forward to their next update at our next meeting, and hopefully the roads will be clear and safe throughout the storm. The next report is introduction of new county staff. Mr. Badesky, do we have new
Yes.
staff members to introduce?
Ms. Parrish was unable to join us here today, and so
Okay.
it's really my pleasure to introduce, and you had a chance to meet Winston Forrest, our new registrar, but it's an honor due to a retirement and promotion. Shannon Fletcher has joined the finance office on December 11th as an accounting analyst. Shannon has over 25 years of experience, most recently serving the Lux Stone Corporation as their accounts payable compliance analyst. Shannon also has public service experience working for both the Pamunkey Regional Jail and the Rappahannock Regional Jail. Welcome.
Welcome, Shannon.
Was Michael Harris able to join us?
I think he was here earlier.
Well, I will just, due to resignation, Michael Harris joined General Services as a groundskeeper on December 18th. Mike has been a delivery driver in the past and holds a CDL. We welcome Michael Harris. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Badesky. The next item on the agenda is a planning and development activity update.
Mr. Chairman, you have the planning and development activity report in your packet, as well as the accounts payable report. As always, we stand ready if you have any questions as it relates to either of those reports.
Okay, are there any questions about planning development activity?
No.
Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll proceed ahead. Accounts payable, that's in the package as well, and that's a matter of information.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on accounts payable? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to the consent items. I guess we've got a third item to add to the 2 that are there, but would you like to just mention briefly about the 2 items on the consent agenda?
Yes, sir. And just for those that are less familiar with how we have the consent agenda is generally for items that are either being referred for future consideration and or are more procedural in nature or have been considered by this body either in prior meetings or individual two-on-two sessions. The items that you have here today, the first is a request for authorization to set a public hearing. This is to consider an ordinance amendment for competitive negotiations to increase the maximum permissible fee on any single project encompassed in contract for architectural and professional engineering services related to multiple constructions for one-year term. This is actually to bring us and can be more consistent with the state law. And so that's the item that we're asking for set for public hearing on February 6th. Second item is an amendment to the 2018 school budget. This amendment does not require any additional funds to be appropriated to the schools, and there's no county transfer. And so as you see, it's requested to amend, and Debbie's here, I think, from the schools. If you have any specific questions, amend the school budget by increasing the school operating fund by the $92,952, transferring $16,500 of instructional funds to the operating fund to the maintenance and technology categories, and increasing the school's cafeteria fund by $5,000.
Okay, great, thank you for that. So the first item, again, is just to set a public hearing. It's not to make a decision, and it is pursuant to changes in state law. And the second one, the school budget updates, there's no increase or decrease in the local transfer. It's really just accounting within their budget. And the third one, of course, is the resolution for Murtis Quarles' retirement. So with that, if we're okay taking them as a group, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent items as presented as a group.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, ayes have it. That motion is carried as well. Consent agenda items are approved. Now we move, shift gears into new business. The first item on new business is a General Assembly legislative update on what's going on or may be going on in the General Assembly session once it begins shortly.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Paul Drumright, Administrative Services Manager. And while we get the slides loading, this afternoon I have a brief update on what are currently our response to our legislative agenda looks like and what we're seeing in the General Assembly itself. So moving forward.
Moving forward. There we go.
There we go. So, thank you. We're going to look at the what 2018 session is going to look like, and then we're going to focus on just a real quick look at our priority request, then the couple items we have on the policy positions, and then we have one bill of interest right now. So, right now, the General Assembly session, they convene on January 10th. To begin their 60-day session. And so you can see on the screen the key milestones that they'll be reaching were crossovers in February 13th, and then they will adjourn at the March 10th. Down at the bottom of the slide, I have just some statistics for comparison purposes, and we'll have this throughout future updates. But the first column shows bills introduced in 17 versus what you see right now has been introduced in 18. And so you can see that there has been a very small number of bills submitted so far compared to how last year ended. The point there is that there is a lot of bills still out there waiting to come that will be coming between now and even up to when session starts on the 10th of January. So we'll be looking at those as those come in, but so that there's very small pool right now to look at for comparison purposes and what the session's going to look like. And if we can move on to the next slide. Right now, so looking at our priority request, so far we only really have 3 out of all the priority requests. We have some piece of legislation been introduced. We have, for the Economic Development Authority, the composition, changing that composition to make it a little bit easier for the EDA to meet. Delegate Ware has put in a bill for us, HB 60. The public facility capacity determination, this relates to proffers and making change within that legislation. Delegate Ware has also agreed to carry a bill for us, HB 163. We're evaluating the language and making sure that the language works for us, that they've put forth on that. On that note, I will say that staff did have a meeting with representatives from the Home Builders Association, both the Richmond and the state. And it was a very good conversation, frank conversation, but we've learned that most likely they will be opposing any bill related to proffers. They are looking to bring wholesale change to that, but want to do it all at once and don't want to do it piecemeal. We'll still put forth our bill and still urge support and passage of HB 163, but at the same time, we're going to still try to dialogue with the Home Builders Association, see if we can help work both sides. But I think it has a steep hill to climb for that one. The other item that does have some bills associated to it is the expand broadband. The budget bill, the current governor's budget that was submitted, includes $2 million in fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20 for what is called the Virginia Telecommunication Initiative. It is a grant program offered by the Department of Housing and Community Development to both localities / nonprofit or private companies, so private broadband providers, encouraging those providers to work with local governments to get funding to expand service. In the previous years, they've only had $1 million each year in that program for 2 years so far, and so they're doubling that amount of money, so that would help expand broadband. Will it solve the problem? Will it benefit? It has the potential to benefit Goochland County, but there are also, we're fighting the other 95 localities in the Commonwealth. The good news is that money is only to address unserved areas. So it's not current. So in Western Henrico, they can't get money through that program, is the good news. And moving on to the next slide, you can see the other priority requests we have. Right now, we do not have any legislation has been filed related to those. Moving on to the next slide. So we have 3 slides of the priority requests for schools. They've only really had bills filed for one of their requests, which is the eliminate the requirement for school to begin after Labor Day. And this is the usual King's Dominion, abolish the King's Dominion law or the Busch Garden law, choose your amusement park. So that's showing on that. And if you go to the next slide, you can see we have no other bills on this slide right now corresponding to the school's request. And then on this final slide, we have no other request either there. Moving on to the priority request on the next slide, we only have right now one of our priority requests, the one related to the proffers, has a bill in the General Assembly that would address it, and that's Delegate Ware's bill filed on our behalf. So we have no other bills right now that would meet any of our priority requests, our policy positions as they're stated. And this, finally, we have one bill of interest that has been brought up. I know, Ms. Lesclett, you shared a number of other bills. We're evaluating those right now.
Some are good, some are bad.
Yeah, exactly. So in future updates, we'll have a lot more bills of interest. But this one right here is Senate Bill 774 by Senator Servell out of Fairfax. It relates to handheld personal communication devices used while driving. And in that bill, they're putting in a specific clause that would benefit amateur radio operators and allow them to be able to use their equipment while driving, while they're doing actions related to emergencies in local government, in state government, or also related to other events authorized by either localities or the Department of Transportation. This bill doesn't meet all of their needs. They'd still like to see some changes, but it goes a long way towards getting some provisions for them to operate. So staff would recommend supporting this bill if that is the pleasure of the board.
On that bill, I think it ought to be noted that they've exempted CB operators, which is a mind boggler. I mean, why
Yeah.
they'd exempt them and not the ham?
Yeah, that is interesting. As Mr. Creasy noted, so there is a specific exemption there. They're creating another exemption, but they go into a whole lot more detail of the restrictions of when the amateur radio operators can use it instead of just saying amateur radio operators. So I believe the amateur radio operators are going to continue to try to work to improve the language. But so right now, the recommendation is to support this as it moves through the process if the board is inclined. And so with that, I will be happy to take any questions.
You have any questions for Paul?
One, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Drumright, so far, and I asked Ms. Lascolette earlier too, and nothing on certificate of public need?
No, sir.
That you know of?
I've looked through, and I haven't seen anything. I will note that we've heard that a number of members of the General Assembly are either holding back bills till the last minute or releasing them very slowly. And also with the change with a number of shocking election results, you have some folks who probably weren't prepared to have bills in the General Assembly who are now working on getting those done. We did also lose one big advocate in the Richmond region, Delegate O'Bannon, who was a very big advocate for COP reform and who was supportive of the county's efforts. So unfortunately, he lost election. So, but we do have that, and we'll keep an eye out for looking for those.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
It's early.
It's early.
It is very early.
Now, Mr. Drumright, this is going to ramp up pretty quickly here, and you're kind of the definition of multitasking. All you have to do is follow 3,000 bills as they work through committee, subcommittee, and final approval. So thank you for all you do on multitasking and keeping this board up to date.
Well, I have to say, also, it's not just me. It's also the staff you see sitting in the audience and staff that back at their desks. They watch out for bills through their associations, through their listservs, and they feed them up as they see issues coming up.
Good. Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a presentation of SiteWorks Unit B LLC claim. Are you going to walk us through this very quickly? And
Yes.
And I'm here for SiteWorks too.
oh, great. Thank you.
Excellent. So, as I see, SiteWorks, the claimant is here and would prefer some time to speak as well. I'll give some introductory remarks, and then maybe SiteWorks could go and I could respond if
That'd be
that would
fine.
be, you'd be amenable to that. We received a demand letter on behalf of SiteWorks Unit B LLC in mid-October. SiteWorks owns a warehouse in the city of Richmond. CVWMA, the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority, which we have a service agreement, well, several service agreements with and utilize along with other localities in the region, utilize that organization. The Central Virginia Waste Management Authority, it's my understanding, contracted with a company called E-Waste Tech Systems, and they were to oversee when we have the days of recycling where you can bring your electronics in, things along that. That is their responsibility to take those electronic items and dispose of them properly and recycle those items. It's my understanding, and I'm sure the SiteWorks representative will get into this, but there was a lease disagreement and E-Waste no longer is the lessee on the property, leaving the waste, the electronic waste in the warehouse. So we received several claims, which I'm sure she will outline, federal-type claims with regard to both environmental law and constitutional law. So I'll turn it over to
Okay.
her.
Let's come forward and let us know who you are, perhaps your name, address, and who you represent. That'd be great. Thank you.
Members of the board, my name is Corey Booker. I'm a lawyer at LeClaire Ryan in Richmond, Virginia. I'm going to keep my comments brief. I know you all have, the county attorney has provided a lot of information in your board packet, and I've reviewed that, and I know you all have reviewed that. Just want to step back a minute. We're talking about e-waste, and what exactly is e-waste? And that's, if you don't know, it's a lot of stuff, but it's computer monitors, hard drives, these really nice television screens that are in here when you're done with them, laptop computers, fax machines, VCRs, DVDs, cell phones, camcorders, cameras, all of that, we call it e-waste. And some e-waste is hazardous, and why it's hazardous is because it has cathode ray tubes in it, and those are glass video components, and some of those components have lead and mercury in it. So as I'm sure county administrator knows, but many of you may know too, e-waste can't go to your landfill. It has to be, because of the hazardous nature of the waste, it has to be disposed properly. It's regulated under federal law, and there are certain, by the Environmental Protection Agency, and there are certain certified recyclers who it is their job to take the e-waste and recycle it. You can either dispose of it in certain landfills, and I don't even think there's a landfill in the state of Virginia that accepts e-waste. Or what happens is a lot of times it is recycled and ground into glass or other material that can be reused. As you heard, what has happened here is the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority, to which you are a member locality, contracted with one of these certified recyclers, a company called E-Waste Tech System. And out of that contract, which was an RFP process that happened in 2015, there were two contracts that came out. The first one was a contract directly between E-Waste Tech and the Central Virginia Waste Management Authority. And then there was a second contract, which was this special services contract, which is what the county attorney was telling you about. You all are not the only county, but there were several counties that signed up in this special services contract with Central Virginia Waste Management Authority and E-Waste Tech. And this is what allowed for citizen collection events. And there were a couple ways that this could happen. In some counties, there would be a day where your citizens could come and drop off their old their material that needed to be recycled. In other counties, there was a designated location, and there wasn't a day, but citizens could come for a period of time and drop off the material. And when there was enough material there, the county would call Central Virginia Waste Management Authority and E-Waste Tech and say, come pick up the equipment. And then E-Waste Tech was supposed to recycle it. E-Waste Tech didn't do their job, and they haven't recycled it. And what has happened is that this material has ended up in a warehouse owned by my client. E-Waste Tech did not pay rent on the warehouse. My client has sued them and is in a process of trying to collect from them, but has been unable to collect any money from them. But more importantly, and why I'm here, is because that waste, some of which came from Goochland County, is sitting in the warehouse. And now my client, a private citizen, is having to do government's job again and find a proper way to dispose of the e-waste. So this is the background of the claim. We have two legal claims. The first one is under CERCLA, which is a federal environmental law that requires it requires counties and public citizens, when there is a release or a threatened release of a hazardous substances, private citizens, when they clean it up, can ask for the response cost back from everyone who contributed to the waste. And so we have sent demands to Central Virginia Waste Management Authorities and all of the participating localities who've contributed waste to the warehouse, asking for help in the cost of having to clean up this mess. I'm here to answer any questions. I'm not going to talk much about the legal issues. I think your county attorney has advised you on what the legal issues are here. But I'm here to answer any questions you all may have.
Any questions? Okay, not at this point. Thank you for that overview. I appreciate that. I think there's another, member of this action, Central Virginia Waste. Is there a representative from that Central Virginia Waste here? Would you like to say anything? You don't have to. Just wanted to give you the opportunity since you're a claimant as well, or on the action. Do we have any questions for Central Virginia Waste Management?
Mr. Chairman, if I can, the county's attorney's office and staff have been in direct correspondence with Central Virginia Waste Management and their representatives over this matter. The county attorney has opined and made a recommendation to you for an action for you to consider. And so certainly, while this will be a legal matter, some of those other questions may come up over time in the course of any legal action. But I think it's been explained and a recommendation provided for your consideration.
And if I may clarify, your demand is for $350,000? Okay. Correct. From us individual, well, as a locality, not combined with the other localities. So you've heard her initial presentation. They're requesting a claim be paid of $350,000 to help alleviate the disposal of this e-waste. Our office has reviewed the potential claims, feel that we have substantial defenses as well as certain indemnification agreements that may apply, as well as legal defenses. Therefore, we would respectfully recommend that you disallow the claim, don't grant the claim.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, we paid to get rid of this stuff. We paid somebody to take the material, right? Already?
Correct.
And are we dealing with regulations or laws?
Dealing with probably laws and regulations, but CERCLA is a federal act. So there'll be regulations out of that, but it's my understanding this is probably in the statute itself.
Other questions or
Chairman.
thoughts? Yes, sir.
Ms. Marshall, is the $350,000 a percentage of what's in the warehouse? Is it allocated for each locality based on what?
Perhaps the claimant could describe the breakdown of their alleged liability.
Sure, and the answer, Mr. Alvarez, your question, the answer is no. The statute is a joint and several liability statute, so we've asked for the same amount. And while the claim is for $350,000, we were hopeful that maybe we would be able to have some conversations and settle the matter, and so, my client would accept a lower amount. But it's a joint and all of the polluters are jointly and severally liable, so each is responsible for the whole and then can go after each other for their percentage amount. Yep.
I got a question, ma'am. You said that polluters, why would we be considered a polluter? I mean, we paid to have it disposed of properly.
Right, so under the federal statute, there is a section of the statute where people who arranged for the disposal of hazardous waste are considered a potentially responsible party that could be responsible for cleaning up the waste, which is why we believe that the county is liable.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Minnick, did you?
Yeah, I think this is for Whitney. If the other counties
Take an action.
make some sort of determination?
It's my understanding, the ones we've heard from have denied the claims. That's my understanding.
And so kind of regardless of the outcome, I mean, the board's responsibility here is not to pass judgment on on the merits perhaps, but on whether or not we believe we have some, our portion of the claim we believe is
We've reviewed the claim, and we disagree with them and don't think that the county is liable for the amount that's claimed. So therefore, we would recommend that you disallow the claim.
Yes. And I believe the county attorney has spent quite a bit of time on this and talked to all the parties involved. And in our packet, they've prepared for our consideration a resolution in accordance with their recommendation, which is to disallow the claim. And that's what's before us now for consideration, is that resolution.
Correct. Whether to allow or disallow, and if disallow, then we would propose that resolution to memorialize your act.
Everybody clear on what we're being asked to do? Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that part of the minutes, we're gonna put our piece of this activity is.
Okay. So maybe along those lines, if this board was to take action to disallow and approve this resolution to disallow, then what would happen next?
Then that decision can be appealed to the circuit court, and that claim would need to be filed within 30 days from today, from the date of your decision, assuming if it were to deny the claim, then they would have a 30-day appeal period to the circuit court.
So if that's the case procedurally, it would leave our hands and enter the court system, I guess. Is that
That is correct.
essentially?
Be a party in litigation, yes.
Okay. Is that? All right, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. And as Whitney has mentioned, if the motion is along the lines of disallowing, there is a resolution in our board packet for our consideration that would codify that action. Is that a fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is this 2 steps?
No, ma'am.
The motion could be to
Disallow.
approve the resolution that disallows the claim, if that makes sense.
Ready for motion?
I'm ready for motion.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, I move that we disallow the claim and approve the resolution to disallow SiteWorks Unit B LLC's claim against Goochland County.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Because of the nature of this, I'll ask Mr. Badesky if he wouldn't do a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Lachelette?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Minnick?
Yes.
Mr. Creasy?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. And those yes votes were to approve the resolution to disallow. So, all right, well, thank you very much for that. Next item on the agenda is a presentation of an unsolicited proposal. Mr. Drumright, you can walk us through this one?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, Paul Drumright, Administrative Services Manager for the county. This afternoon, it is my privilege to briefly share with you that the county has received an unsolicited proposal by Excellanet LLC, doing business as SCS Broadband, for a public-private partnership to expand broadband services in Goochland County. They've submitted it according to the county's PPEA policy that was adopted a number of years ago. Ms. Marshall or Mr. Sales, Ms. Marshall had given some presentations on this in a past number of years ago when we were talking with some of the other localities about broadband. So as what we have before you right now is their proposal, and what we're asking is for the board to go ahead and approve us going through and doing a more detailed review of the proposal, whether to see if it merits further action according to our policy. Right now, the county staff has done a high-level review of it and believe it does merit a further detailed review according to our policy. That further detailed review does not commit us to any awarding of contracts or accepting or working on this with them, just going into a more detailed review of what they have submitted to us. in addition to that, we would also note that we were requesting that we do not impose a proposal fee to a Celanet LLC doing business as SES Broadband. We believe we do have the capabilities on staff to review this and any criteria or any other evaluations we needed to. I believe a copy of the proposal has been provided at your seat, and
Mr. Chairman, if I can add to Mr. Drumright's comments, as per your own policy, we were required to deliver you a copy of the proposal here today. That proposal has not been fully vetted, as Mr. Drumright has shared with you. The way the process works under your proposal is once received, we evaluate it for its just basic sufficiencies to move forward in a process. That process, as we move forward, would also require us to actually put out for up to 45 days an additional opportunity for others to submit like proposals. It also puts us in a position where we can review and negotiate these proposals in a different perspective than we can until you take some level of action of acceptance to move forward in the process. I think we all recognize the need and importance of expanded broadband to our community. We are pleased to have interest from an outside third party. That has been a specific goal of this board in how we proceed in internet service provision for our residents. With that, we do have to also take caution that we make sure that the proposal and ultimate service is in the better interest of all of our residents, and that's a major part of this review process. And so, and this also would allow for additional competition as we move forward in the process to potentially receive other proposals that we would evaluate against this one. And so, again, this is just the beginning of a process. We are not here to tell you levels of service. As soon as these come up, residents will start saying, well, when's it going to start? How much will it cost? How fast will it be? All reasonable questions, none of which we're prepared to address at this point of review, which we will consider in this. It's also important for us to make sure not only do we have an interested service provider that we'll work with, but to make sure that we got protections for our own interests. We want to make sure that they can actually deliver the services they suggest that they want to come provide to our community. And so we don't get locked in and put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage down the road either. And so while we're eager and excited that this has some real potential to deliver some service to our residents that's been needed, we want to make sure we do it in appropriate and consistent with the policies this board has adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Badesky. That was a good overview. Questions or thoughts, either from Mr. Drumright or staff?
Mr. Chairman, from either one, I guess, so what you're asking us to do is to approve us to evaluate the proposal, allow you to evaluate the proposal, and then how will we get the results of that evaluation? Will there be 2-on-2 meetings, or what's your thinking?
Yes, sir. We will continue to proceed with that in the process. I would even welcome if this board wanted to designate a representative or two to assist in that process. We're always looking for takers. But I think this process for us, it's really critical. I mean, it's been a long time coming. We want to make sure we do it right. The more eyes in the process, the better. And just to be clear, the steps I outlined, everything from here forward will be a public process. In fact, the proposal that they have submitted, the way they submitted it being unsolicited, we didn't put out an RFP and had them respond to this. They submitted it. It is now a public document. Others will have the ability to submit a proposal already seeing what their competition, so to speak, has submitted to us for consideration. And we'll have some levels of negotiation in this entire process as well. And so I think this is about as transparent of a process as you can, whereas other processes that are even competitive in nature have periods of time until they're open publicly, and there's protected restrictions in those processes. This process will be pretty open. Our residents will be very clear on what it is we're considering, and we will learn from others their interest in service provision as well in this process. So I think we're asking for your acceptance for us to move forward consistent with your own policy. We will notify publicly any other opportunity. That 45-day period I noticed has to be publicly noticed. And so that'll all be done in the paper in our typical formats of notice. And we'll be accepting those. Once we get to that point, we'll also be putting some time frames on the process. They sort of trigger this for us. You now, according to your policy, have separate triggers. This proposal actually came in right before Christmas. We don't really, until you take action today, trigger any review process. Your policy requires your acceptance before it would go any further. In fact, if you're not comfortable accepting, and staff is recommending that you do, if we would deny, it would end there. And so we believe that the proposal at a very high level is structured enough for us to take further action, open the opportunity for competitive bidding, and in that process, further negotiation.
Sounds good to me.
So what I guess, from what I understand, staff is seeking a directive to proceed to a conceptual stage, and that directive would not involve any commitment of either selecting a provider or committing county financial resources. It really is just an okay to proceed to the conceptual stage?
That's correct, sir. And at this point, this was not a budgeted item. If there's any budgetary considerations and or contract award, depending on levels of award and those kinds of things, we'd be bringing that back to this board. And so there's everything is going to be completely transparent as we move forward in this process, as far as what type of award we would do at such time, who that provider would be. It may or may not be this provider, but they are the ones triggered.
So one of your challenges through this process is to contain expectations and manage expectations, because when you hear those two magic words, expanded broadband, immediately a lot of creativity goes on. So understand. But in this case, this really is just the initial conceptual stage. There's really no commitments of any kind other than a directive to staff to proceed.
Correct. And just to frame sometime, I think we're probably talking at least 90 days before it would be back in front of this board in any shape or form. By the time we were able to put it out on the street, review proposals, bring recommendations, we're probably talking at least 3 months before we're at that stage.
Any other questions, discussion?
No, let's look at it.
Okay. And the staff's recommendation at this point is to proceed. So at this point, I guess, despite the fact there's no financial commitment, I'd ask for a motion to direct staff to proceed.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that we direct staff to proceed evaluating the proposal to get us to the conceptual phase with SES broadband.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, ayes have it. Mr. Badesky, you have your directive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, the next item on the agenda is appointments. Do we have any appointments? Seems like there's no appointments this month. The next item, as we mentioned earlier in this meeting, was that we would go ahead and cancel the closed meeting and certification, which was the next step on the agenda. And that brings us all the way through to the dinner break. So at this point, unless there's any other business to come before this body, without objection, we will go ahead and take a break, a dinner break, and reconvene back in this room at 7 p.m. this evening. So thank everybody for coming.